I appreciate Matt not telling you guys I was the one that messed up that song in the last hour. Is anybody here sick of pandemics? Just checking. All right, there's 1, 2, 3, okay. Couple, 4. All right. No kidding, me too. I mean, it's just going on and on and on. And what 2020 has reminded me, this whole pandemic here, this COVID pandemic in 2020 has reminded me that I do not live in a movie. As a modern American Christian, I think I've kind of had the idea and developed that idea that every crisis is supposed to be averted in under 2.5 hours. Every problem is supposed to have a microwavable solution. Every situation that we deal with is supposed to be taken care of quickly. I mean, yes, there will be bumps in the road, and yes, there'll be problems here and there, but it really shouldn't take very long for those things to be overcome and dealt with, and we just get to move on and continue with things just being wonderful. And what I've learned this year is that is not the world I live in. I live in a world that is full of sin. I live in a world that has been marred by sin, that has been corrupted by sin. And because we live in this world that has been changed by sin from almost the very beginning, we live in a world where there are problems and there are struggles and there is sickness and there is death. And I don't know what all you have been through this year. No doubt we've all been through this whole approach to COVID that our community and our country has followed. But maybe you've been sick. Maybe you got it and went through some hardship for a while. Or maybe someone in your family got it. Maybe you've had loved ones this year that have gotten sick and even died. Maybe it's impacted you financially and struggled along with the financial struggles of trying to make money when your business is closed. And here, of course, we're just talking about the things that have happened because of this COVID disease that is spreading around, and not even talking about all the other stuff that's been going on for years and continued to go on while we've been focused on this one thing. There have still been people that have had heart disease. Diabetes is still being diagnosed. There are folks who have been diagnosed with cancer this year. There are folks who have had marriage struggles and relationship struggles. There are folks who just spiritually have hit a wall, and some even given up on their faith this year. These are all the kinds of things that go on in our world and happen even among children of God, even among the saints, even among those who've said, I'm going to follow the Lord God. He is my God. I'm going to follow Him. It's going to be great. All of these kinds of things happen. And when they do happen, it is a ready-made opportunity for the enemy to cast the temptation before us to just give up and quit. To just decide that it's not worth it. To think that maybe God doesn't care. Or worse, maybe He's not even there. And that, of course, is what unbelievers are saying. That's what the skeptics and the agnostics and the atheists are saying as they look around and they see people suffer and they see the suffering continue on and nothing seems to be being done about it from God. And they start to tell us, I think He's not there. Why do you believe in Him? Why are you praying to Him? I don't think He's there. And we hear that over and over and over again. And if we are not careful, even we begin to believe it. I'd like to share with you a story that I read in my Bible. In fact, more than a story, a historical event, an account of an event of God's people. We find it in Exodus chapter 15. In Exodus chapter 15, we meet our God. And here in Exodus chapter 15, the God that we meet is very specifically called Yahweh-Rophe, the Lord our healer. Some of you may not be aware of the history behind this. In the book of Exodus, God's people, the Israelites, were in captivity in Egypt. And they cry out because of the oppression and the suffering, and God remembers his covenant with the children of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And so he meets a man named Moses. He comes to him in the burning bush that you might have heard of. And he says, Moses, I'm going to send you, and you're going to deliver my people. And Moses has all kinds of excuses in Exodus chapter 3 and 4 about why he's not the guy. And one of the questions he asks, one of the things he says is, well, wait, when I get there, the people are going to ask, well, who is this God that has sent you? What am I going to tell them? I don't even know your name. And in Exodus chapter 3, God says, you tell them, I am has sent you. I am that I am, the self-existent God, the one who just is. I am. And from that statement of that declaration of God's self-existent nature, the Jews came up with something, and here's a fancy word. You might want to remember this one. I don't think it's going to be on the test at the end, but it's called the Tetragrammaton. 4 letters. Tetra, 4, grammaton, writing letters. And it was 4 Hebrew letters that were pieced together. We don't really know how they were pronounced. In fact, I'm told by those who have studied Hebrew that they're actually designed to be together, that they are unpronounceable. Because, of course, the Israelites thought that if you pronounced the name of God, that was beyond what we had permission to do. And so you had these 4 letters that were pieced together, and for years, in fact, those, if you grew up in church years ago, you may have heard the word Jehovah. Anybody heard that word before? Jehovah. In fact, we've got some songs with that word in it, Jehovah. That is kind of an English representation of that little word, those letters chunked together. Scholars in the past few years have decided that probably it was more likely pronounced Yahweh. So I like to pronounce it that way. But that's the same word. And in your English Bible, whenever you see in the Old Testament the word Lord, and on some occasions God, where all the letters are capitalized, but the first one is just a little bit bigger than the others, that is the English translator's way of saying right here, here's that word, Jehovah or Yahweh. And so God says to him, tell them Yahweh has sent you. And Moses goes into Egypt and he confronts Pharaoh, and Pharaoh won't listen. Pharaoh says, I don't know that God. Why should I listen to him? And Moses says, well, you're about to meet him. And after 10 plagues, Pharaoh says, okay, you win. And he drives out the Israelites. But of course, it doesn't take him long to realize that he just got rid of all that free labor, and he decides he wants them back. So he starts to chase them down. And they find themselves at the Red Sea, and Pharaoh behind them. And God parts the waters. And Israel walks through the Red Sea on dry land and comes out on the other side. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, Paul calls this their baptism. And they get to the other side, and Egypt, the army, follows them in behind, and God brings the water crashing down and destroys the enemy army. Now, guys, I want you to think for just a moment, if you had been an Israelite on that day, you thought you weren't going to make it, but you witnessed probably the greatest miracle you've ever seen in your life. And actually, you just saw 10 pretty amazing ones, but now you've seen the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life, and it was your victory, and it was your salvation, and it was your deliverance. What would you think and feel and do? I mean, you do what the Israelites did. You would celebrate, you would rejoice, you would party, you would sing. And that's exactly what they did. They praised the Lord, and can you imagine on that day, they're thinking about how wonderful it was going to be, and all the thoughts in their mind was, we are heading to the promised land, we're going to get there, we're going to set up shop there, we're going to worship our God who's going to take care of us, and it's all going to be wonderful from here on to eternity. But the next day they walked out into the wilderness, and they didn't find any water. And in fact, for 3 days, they didn't find any water. And here's our story. Exodus 15:22. Moses made Israel set out from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water when they came to Marah. They could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. Therefore it was named Marah. And the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" And he cried to Yahweh. And Yahweh showed him a log, or a tree, your translation might say. And he threw it in the water, and the water became sweet. Therefore Yahweh made for them a statute and a rule. And there he tested them, saying, "If you will diligently listen to the voice of Yahweh your God, and do that which is right in his eyes, and give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am Yahweh-Rophe. I am the Lord your healer." About 4 years ago, when we were focused for a whole year on God and who he is and what he has done, we were introduced to this Yahweh-Rophe. But I thought that as we are in this pandemic and all that we're going through right now, it would be good for us to be reintroduced to him, to remember what we have learned about this God and this event, because he is our healer. And we need to learn from this event. And what can we learn? Brothers and sisters, the very first thing that we need to learn from this is that bitter times happen to the delivered. Bitter times happen to the delivered. Do you remember your baptism? You had recognized your sinfulness. You had understood what all of that meant about your future and your destiny. And you knew that if you didn't have God, if God didn't do something, that was it for you. And you heard the gospel and you recognized that Jesus had died for your sins, and you decided to give your allegiance to him, to surrender to him. And so you confessed him as your Lord, and you committed to turn away from your sins and to follow his will. And you gave your allegiance to him by being immersed in water, buried in water, baptized in water, raised to walk in a new life with a new king. And as you came up out of the waters, it was something you could almost feel. You could feel that things had changed, that I'm with God now and God is with me, and it's going to be wonderful. I know there's been bad times in the past, but those were all because of me. Those were because of my sins. Now I'm with Jesus Christ. Now I'm with God. Now I'm with my King. It's all going to be wonderful. And from here on to heaven, it's going to be daisies and rainbows and buttercups, and it's going to be just wonderful. And then you went to work on Monday morning. See, somebody did that. Or you went to school on Monday morning. Or you got sick. Or maybe your spouse got sick. Or one of your kids got sick. Or one of your siblings or your parent. Maybe they died. Or maybe you lost your job. Or your home. Or maybe there was a relational problem with somebody in your family or a friend, or maybe even somebody in the church. And you thought to yourself, it's not supposed to be like this for saved people. I'm saved. I've been delivered. These kind of things aren't supposed to happen to us. That wasn't the promise. We still live in this world. And this world's a tough place to live. Bitter times happen to the delivered. And that's exactly what happens to Israel here in Exodus chapter 15. Think about it. Yesterday, the problem was there's too much water. We're going to die. And so God removes the water and they walk through on dry land. But for today and the last 3 days, what's the problem? No water. Guys, we just have to understand bitter times happen even to the delivered. I don't want to act like it's all bitterness. It's not. Guys, there are some good times. We as Christians, we have a lot of great times. I mean, we're having one right now, right? Right? Okay, Benji says no. I wish it was Andrew. Next week, buddy, next week. We have some great times. I don't mean when I preach these kinds of lessons to act like you become a Christian and now for the rest of your life until finally you get to heaven it's just dismal and it's awful, because that's not the way it is. The thing about it is all the good times, those aren't the ones that give us problems usually. It's the tough times, it's the bad times, especially when they linger on. Especially when they continue for a decade in 1 year. I mean, when that's the way, that's when we have the problem. So that's the ones we have to preach about. And while I want you to understand it's not like that all the time, there are times when it is like that. Bitter times happen to the delivered. And what we need to remember during those bitter times is that only Yahweh can heal. Nobody else, nothing else. Only Yahweh can heal. Put yourself in the shoes of the Israelites. You have had this wonderful, amazing victory. You were certain that from here on out, you're going to march into the promised land. In fact, listen to their song of praise back in chapter 15. In chapter 15, verse 13 through 18, listen to their song of praise here. This is at the edge of the Red Sea. You have led in your steadfast love the people whom you have redeemed. You have guided them by your strength to your holy abode. The peoples have heard, they tremble. Pangs have seized the inhabitants of Philistia. Now are the chiefs of Edom dismayed. Trembling seizes the leaders of Moab. All the inhabitants of Canaan have melted away. Terror and dread fall upon them. Those are all people in the promised land. Those aren't the people that God just defeated in the waters. Those are the people he's going to defeat when they get to the promised land. And what are they singing and praising God for? They're saying, we're about to have a great trip. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to go straight into the promised land. And all of those people, they're trembling before us. Terror and dread fall upon them, verse 16, because of the greatness of your arm. They are still as a stone till your people, O Lord, pass by, till the people pass by whom you have purchased. You will bring them in and plant them on your mountain, the place, O Lord, which you have made for your abode, the sanctuary, O Lord, which your hands have established. The Lord will reign forever and ever. And you've sang, and you've danced, and you've feasted, and you've partied and celebrated and rejoiced. And now today you're starting your trip. And you get through the whole day and you don't find any water. How much water do you think it would take for 1 million people to walk through this wilderness? But maybe the first day is not so bad, because surely you had some reserves. You had filled up your canteens yesterday, and you've got your skins are full. So you've got your reserve. It's okay, tomorrow we'll find water. But now the second day has ended and no water. And you say to yourself, you know what? Third time's the charm. Third time, third day. 3 days. We'll find water tomorrow. It's really starting to get important right now. Parents are emptying out their water skins, giving it to their children, and they're their parents, the aged, trying to give them the last little bit that you have, hoping and praying that tomorrow we'll find water. I'm not a scientist, but everything I've ever read is that scientists tell us that 3 days is kind of the length that you can go without any water. And if you're out in the wilderness and the sun is baking down on you, at one day without water could kill you. How many people are close? As they look around, and now it's 2 days and 3 days without water, and the third day comes and goes, and no water. And you begin to wonder if we can even get this entire host up and march with another day without water. But you do, and you get up. And you're kind of in the middle, or maybe you're at the back, and you start to hear some twittering up front. You start to hear some people muttering and some people saying some things, and all of a sudden it gets back to you, and you're hearing that they're rejoicing, and they're singing, and they're shouting because water has been found. Woo! You're getting excited. You can't wait to get up there to get to drink the water. And then the shouting up ahead starts to fade a little bit, and it starts coming back, and the next thing you hear is, never mind, it's undrinkable. Never mind, it's no good. Understand, when it says that the water was bitter, it doesn't mean that it tasted bad. Look, when you're that thirsty, you can drink some pretty nasty tasting stuff. What it means is it was undrinkable. It's probably an idea of a brackish, briny salt water. It's probably that idea of water that actually won't help you but would kill you, would make the dehydration happen even faster. Kind of like in that poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. Because if you drink that water, it won't save you, it'll kill you quicker. And the people start to grumble, and the people start to moan. Why did God let them go through that? I think it's because they needed to understand the place of God in their lives and the place of water. After all, it was water that had come crashing down on the Egyptians to deliver them, right? You see, what has happened over this last 3 days is the hope of the Israelites has shifted from Yahweh to water. If only we could find some water. If only we could find some water, we'd be okay. And they found water. But it wasn't okay. And what did they learn? What they learned is, I don't need water. What I need is God. I don't need water. What I need is Yahweh. Water is not my healer. Water is not my salvation. Yahweh is my healer. Yahweh is my deliverer. Yahweh is my salvation. And they needed to understand that. What about us? What are our if-onlys? If only they'd find a vaccine. If only they'd find a treatment. If only somebody else was elected president. If only I could find a job. If only I could get a promotion. If only I could get a girlfriend or a boyfriend. If only I could get married. If only my spouse would straighten out. If only my kids would straighten up and fly right. If only I had a tub of ice cream. If only I could lose weight. If only I could have a drink. If only I could have a toke, a snort. If only I could win the lottery. And we start being tempted to go back to Egypt. Because sometimes looking back, those if-onlys that we think would deliver us now seemed to be helping us back there. And we forget that those are the things that actually started killing us. What are your if-onlys? Because the thing that we need to understand is none of those things will heal. Whether sinful or otherwise, none of those things will deliver. Only Yahweh can heal. He is the only healer. Even today. And I need to remember that not only is Yahweh the only one that can heal, Yahweh actually does heal. Yahweh does deliver. Yahweh does save. And that's what happened here. That's what happened in Exodus chapter 15. Who delivered Israel again? And if you keep reading the story, again. And if you keep reading the story, again. Yahweh. Yahweh is the only healer. Yahweh is the only deliverer. But now I admit that we have to recognize a few caveats on this. Because we're using the word healer, what is so easy for us to do is to jump to just thinking about biological sickness. We do need to understand, and really have already hinted at the fact, that God has not promised us, His children, biological healing. And so the reality is Christians do get sick and they do die from sicknesses. God has not promised that all good Christians live in this world, in this life, forever. That's not the life He's promised. That's not the healing He's promised. And we need to understand that applies even to a lot of the other things that we think about as we're thinking about healing. Do you realize that God has not ever promised to heal your bank account? God has not actually promised to heal your marriage. God has not actually promised to heal your relationship with your kids or your parents or your friends. He hasn't promised that. What He's promised is to heal your soul. What He's promised is that you and I have sinned and we have damaged and defiled the very image of God that He has planted within us. And He has said, that I'm going to heal. And He does that by sending Jesus to die on the cross. But please understand this, that all those other things we've talked about, when they are healed, because sometimes, in fact, oftentimes they are, guess who actually did the healing? Yahweh. Look, Yahweh has not promised to heal your cancer, but if your cancer is healed, guess who did it? Yahweh. He has not promised to heal your marriage, but if your marriage is healed, guess who did it? Yahweh. And I notice one more thing. I recognize that Yahweh could have healed their dehydration miraculously. I mean, while they're walking through the wilderness, their shoes don't wear out, their garments don't wear out, they have food falling from the sky. For 40 years, He could have just miraculously hydrated them. But instead, what He does is He heals the water. And because He heals the water, they are healed. Now, I find that fascinating because the whole point of this story is it's not the water that's doing the healing. And yet, how does God do the healing? He does it by healing the water. And so, I think the thing that we need to understand is that when I get sick, reading this passage doesn't mean I'm not allowed to go to a doctor. Yahweh's the one that heals me. I'm not going to go to a doctor. Well, it may be that the way Yahweh heals you is there's doctors who know how to deal with this. Boy, my marriage is messed up, but I'm not going to see a counselor. It may be that what God has done is healed a counselor so the counselor can be His tool. But even when that happens, we do not want to be like the Israelites in Hosea chapter 11 and verse 3. Just listen. Hosea 11 and verse 3. Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took them up by their arms, but they did not know that I healed them. Sometimes God just sends manna from the air. Sometimes God heals the water. But in the end, who is the one that did the healing? Yahweh. And He's the one that gets the glory and the praise. And we need to understand that Yahweh is the only one that can heal. And we need to hang on to the promise that Yahweh does heal. But remember this. Yahweh heals in His time, in His way, for His purposes, and for His glory. Why? Why did He make them wait 3 days? Why didn't He get them to Elim first? They're going to travel on from Marah in the next verse, and they're going to come to Elim that has 12 springs, one spring for each of the tribes, and 70 palm trees. Which shows us how amazing the springs were, because out there in the wilderness, here's this place that's got so much water, you've got 70 palm trees. One for each. It's just amazing. Why didn't He take them there first? Well, I can't answer all of those questions, but I can tell you this is because the way He did it is what brought the most glory to Him. Because He had a purpose. He had a lesson that He wanted them to learn, and this was the way for them to learn it. But understand that God's glory and God's purposes do not go against our good. In fact, what glorifies God the most is doing good to us. And so Romans chapter 8 and verse 28. In Romans chapter 8 and verse 28 it says, we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose. It doesn't say that He causes all things, but it does say that He causes all things to work together for good. Yes, even COVID-19. Yes, even this approach we've taken to it, and I don't know what your thought about it is. I know I'm looking at some people who say what we've done here in our country is the worst thing possible, and some are saying this is exactly what we need to do, and we need to keep doing more of it. I don't care what your view on it is. All of this, God will use for our good. Because He is glorified by doing good to us. And so He takes everything that happens and molds it together so that those among us who love Him experience good. And we need to hang on to that. And as we consider that, that leads us to a final understanding of this story. Why did this happen? Why? There were reasons it happened for them. There were lessons that they needed to learn. But I am convinced that the reason this happened to them is because we needed to hear it. Because this story of a group of people who after their baptism go out into the wilderness to be tempted and tested. Does that sound familiar? Do you know anybody else that had that happen to them? Baptized and then went out to the wilderness and tempted and tested? Who spent 3 days looking for life. Does that remind you of anybody else? 3 days until they had life? Brothers and sisters, the reason this happened is not so we could look back to that story. But so through the story we've read in Exodus 15, we can look forward to a better story, a bigger story, a more important story, a story that applies to us even more strongly. Because notice the very odd prescription that Yahweh had. English Standard Version says He showed Moses a log. The word there is actually the word for tree. It's etz. Tree. Take a tree. And some commentators will try to tell you, well, in these Middle Eastern lands, there's a tree that you can throw in salt water. There's a flower that they found there you can throw in there and it'll suck the salt out or it'll make it. It's not true. In fact, even most of the commentaries will say that. Say, well, but we haven't been able to find one like that. It's a miraculous healing. He told Moses, look, there's a dead tree. Now what I want you to do, I know this water is going to kill you, but what you're going to do is you're going to take this dead tree and you're going to throw it in there and it's going to become living water. It's the exact same word that Paul is quoting when in Galatians chapter 3, I think it is, and about verse 13, when he says that Jesus was cursed because cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. A tree that seems to be death and seems to be the implement of death becomes the purveyor of life. When Paul quoted there, he's quoting from Deuteronomy 21:23, and that's the word, tree. How did Jesus heal us? By bringing a tree right into the middle of our sickness and dying on it. And after 3 days, being resurrected to new life. And what we learn from this story is about Yahweh-Rophe, Jesus, our healer. He is the only healer. And if we want healing, there is only one place to turn, and that is Jesus. Would you pray with me, please? Yahweh-Rophe, today we pray to you, not merely as creator of the universe, as sovereign Lord and ruler. We pray to you, not merely as commander and king who has given us instruction. We pray to you, our healer. Lord, we need healing. And we pray for healing. And we are thankful that through Jesus Christ on the cross, in the tomb, resurrected and ascended, you have in fact already healed what is most important. And yet we live in this world where sickness reigns, emotionally, psychologically, and biologically. And so we ask for healing. And Lord, as we consider this pandemic that is plaguing us, it's not even the worst one our country has faced, even in the last 200 years. And yet it is plaguing us. We pray, Father, that you, if it will bring you glory, that you would bring it to a swift and sudden end, that you would demonstrate in a way that no one could argue against that you are Yahweh-Rophe, you are our healer, that by the exercise of your power it would draw people to you. Yet, Lord, if it brings you more glory, to work through the scientists and the doctors who are studying so hard and working so hard every day to provide healing and help, then Lord, we pray that you would do it there. And we are so thankful that you have raised up among us knowledgeable people who are able to study and who are able to experiment, who are able to figure out these things. And if that is what will bring you the most glory, we pray that you would bring healing through that means. But Lord, if it will bring you even more glory that we linger in this mess just as it is right now, if what it will do is teach us to rely upon you and bring people who have pushed against you to their knees so that they will turn to you and find that you are the only place of healing, then Lord, we pray that you do that. And Lord, if it brings you the most glory, that we, your people, should suffer this sickness and even among us some would die, and you would take them to be home with you, then Lord, if that is your will and that is what magnifies you the most, we pray for that. Because Lord, we know that you are our healer and you have healed us. And even this sickness and the threat of death does not take our hope away from you. And we look forward, whether it is this week because of this sickness or 25 years from now because of something else, we look forward to being with you because we know, Father, that you are our healer and you have healed us. We love you, Father. Thank you for loving us first. It's through your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen. If you'd like to, you can put your notes away now. We're going to have another song. In the main, today I have presented this lesson with essentially one goal in mind. That this week, as you pray, you would pray to God not merely as creator of the universe, not merely as sovereign King and Lord, but as Yahweh-Rophe, Yahweh our healer. When you go into your prayer closet this week, when you gather with your family around the table, when you gather with your family in prayer, when you gather with your brothers and sisters here, pray to the Lord, our healer. But it is also true that if there's anyone here today for whom Yahweh is not really your Lord, that you have not surrendered to Yahweh-Rophe, Jesus our healer, I want you to know there's no place to find any healing but in him. And we would invite you today, as Israel was delivered through baptism, that you would also. That you would give your allegiance to Jesus and allow him to heal what matters most. We're going to sing a song. And we sing this song to worship God, but we want to give you the opportunity, if you want to be healed today, we can take you into the waters of baptism and raise you up to walk in a new life. If we can help you with that right now, won't you please come as we stand and sing this hymn.